coffee cup is out, which means that this is another Coffee with Dan moment. So, like I said before, this is kind of taking me back to the times where I would hang out with my friends at a coffee shop and we would drink coffee, which we really cannot do nowadays because of COVID. And so I wanted to speak with you guys, tell you guys a story or two, do that sort of thing, because frankly, I miss doing that. And I miss showing out my my nerdy nature. So I've brought with me today my little child, R2-D2, which I made at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Yeah, it's the sort of thing that's kind of part of me. Like, I love certain pop culture things, and it's nice to be able to talk about them, and I miss doing that with all my friends. So, representative of my nerdy conversations of the past. But it's okay. Yeah, if you're wondering, currently the TV shows that I'm nerding out on are The Mandalorian, because I'm rewatching that one again, and WandaVision. I'm on a Disney spree right now, and it's been a lot of fun to do and watch. WandaVision is kind of like it's a sleeper hit for me. At first I was kind of like not too much into it, but then I started thinking about like all the implications, and all the implications of it are kind of deadly. So it's kind of cool. Mainly, what I wanted to talk about today was I wanted to elaborate on my first visit to China, the first time I got there, because I talked about it a little bit last time, and other people wanted to know the whole story about what happened there. And that first day was a challenge, to say the least. So I was arriving at Guangzhou that day. It was the first time that I was flying since 9/11, since I remember that I added that last time. And I was worried about the seats, and I was worried about flying, but that was okay. We flew, we landed, and we landed in one piece. So that was okay. A bit of a long journey, but what can you expect for a flight to China? But yes, I finally get there, I'm safe. And then at that moment in time, I had to find a computer to check my email, and I found out that the person that was going to pick me up from the airport was not going to arrive for like 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, great. I just stepped off of this, what was it? It was like a 16-hour flight, 18-hour flight. I'm exhausted, I'm hungry again, I don't have any of the local money, I don't have a cell phone or anything like that, because they were like, we're going to take care of that when we pick you up and after you land. So I was pretty much stranded at the airport because I didn't know any better. So I get there, and then I'm like, well, this is an airport, and usually at airports they accept multiple currencies. So I should be okay to go to a restaurant and get some food and just, do that. I passed some currency transfer stations before I left the area where, you were supposed to wait for your pickup or whatever. But I didn't transfer any money because I was like, hey, we're going to go to a bank later like they told me, and we're going to do that later. So I had no money exchanged. All I had was US dollars, didn't have a credit card at the time, didn't have a bank account in the US at the time because I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to use it. Those two big mistakes, but we'll get to that in another video. And I was just walking around and looking for something to eat and stuff like that. At this point, I had none of the language under my belt. I mean, at least I still don't have a lot of the language under my belt, but at least now I could kind of know how to get what I want. Like saying new rohu, which would be beef. I'm probably saying that wrong as well, so don't take that. But yeah, then I was completely and totally clueless, and I'm just walking around, and there's a couple of places that are there that are serving food that looks like questionable to me. Like, I don't know, questionable in the sense that like I don't know what's being served and I cannot tell what's being served. Everything's all in Chinese characters, so I really have no clue. I didn't have any translation apps on my cell phone or anything like that. I really went into this completely and totally unprepared. And there was only two places, that had any English characters and had English menus or any, well, no, they didn't even have English menus. They just had English characters in the restaurant name. And the first restaurant was this restaurant called White Rabbit. And I'm not opposed to eating rabbit. I've done so in the past, but I have a what you like to call a food aversion type thing. I really need to know what I am eating before I actually eat it. I'm not the type of person that can eat everything that's put in front of me. I have things about soup textures and like certain things like that. It gets complicated, and we'll go into picky eating abroad later. But it was like I wasn't really in the mood for it. And the other restaurant that had English titles there was McDonald's. And at the time, I was really anti-McDonald's, but that day, that morning, it was like a godsend. So I go in and I try to order, and someone's helping me out with like their as much English as they can muster. Then I find out that they don't take currencies other than Chinese currency. And I was like, crap, I don't have any Chinese money. And this person that's supposed to pick me up is still like a couple of hours away. So I check the price of the food that I want to eat, and I go to try to find my way back to the currency exchange station, which of course is behind security lines. So I kind of I had to talk to a guard and kind of had to like halfway explain that, like, you know, I forgot to exchange currency, and like after a little bit of pantomime and like showing money and showing the thing, he's like, okay, you could pass. He let me pass. Thankfully, he let me pass because, frankly, at that point, I was hungry, I was bored out of my mind, and I kind of needed something to do, and I couldn't just sit there and wait for like 3 hours straight for my representative from the company I was working for to pick me up. I get through, I exchange the money, I finally get back, and my first meal in China is McDonald's. And I know that is such a letdown, but it's the truth. And I'm sitting there, and everything just dawns on me in that instant. Like there's a bunch of little fears that like accumulated together. Like, well, what if this was all like kind of just like a weird prank by a person or something like that, and they're not gonna come pick me up, and I'm just going to stay here for like ever in the airport, like that one movie? Or like, what if this is like the company that I'm working for actually isn't that reputable? What if they're not reputable, and I end up being in a place that is not to my standards and stuff like that? Because we have different standards. We all have different standards all over the world, some better, some worse, and that's okay. But I don't know if I'd be able to live in a very rundown place or something like that. And I'm sitting there, drinking my coffee and eating my sausage and egg muffin thing that they serve over at McDonald's, and hash browns. And I'm starting to worry. I'm actually starting to worry, like maybe this was not the best decision in my life. So there's nothing that I could really do at the moment other than just sit there. So I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, The 2 hour mark passed, and I'm starting to get worried because like nobody's there. And then I start to think about, wait a minute, like they know me, but I have no idea who I'm looking for, which is like a huge deal. I should know exactly who I'm looking for. I have no idea who I'm looking for, and I'm stuck in the airport in China. No friends, no contacts, no anything. And I'm sitting there. We're finally at the 3 hour point. And finally somebody comes up to me who recognizes me and is like, hey, are you Daniel? I'm like, yes, I'm Daniel. And it's like, I'm here from the blah, blah, blah company. We're here to pick you up. And I'm like, great, finally. So relieved. Like, that took a bunch of weight off my shoulders at that moment, because it was like 3 hours of uncertainty at that point in time. And finally the lady comes and she's gonna pick me up. But there's a catch to it. It turns out that there's another teacher that's also coming in on that day. And if we do not wait for her, she's going to have to wait like 2 or 3 hours like I did. And I was like, shit. Well, how much longer do we have to wait? Oh, an hour and a half. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Let's just wait for them. I was tired, I was irritated, but I didn't want the next person to go through the same thing that I went through. So I was like, let's wait, it's okay. So 2 hours later, the security finally lets her through, and we start going into Guangzhou, and we start doing all the stuff that we need to do. We started going over all our health stuff. We started doing the bank accounts. We started getting our cell phone so we could communicate and do all that stuff. Got ourselves into the hotel room, which was okay. Not too bad, not too good. And that's when we actually, after all that, we went into the office. After rest and all that stuff, we went into the office. And at that point in time, they asked me a question, and they asked me, well, Daniel, you came all the way to China to teach. Would you be willing to go a little further? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, we would like you to teach outside of Guangzhou. And I was like, well, outside of Guangzhou? And she was like, yes, outside of Guangzhou, only 2 or 3 stops by train. And at that point in time, what I thought she meant was that 2 or 3 stops outside of, like, the subway train or something like that, probably like a residential area outside of Guangzhou. And I kind of was expecting that. And I was like, that's okay. Like, yes, that's fine. We could do that. And she's like, okay, so we want you to go teach in Hunan. And I was like, Hunan? I've never heard of that city. Some of you are laughing right now, and they know my ignorance at that point in time. Yes, I was quite ignorant and quite naive and stupid. But anyways, I was like, well, 2 or 3 stops off the train. That's fine. I don't care about that. That's perfectly fine. And then I started meeting up with some of my fellow teachers, and it dawned on me at that point in time that it may be a little farther than what they were making it out to be. And it turns out that yes, I was correct. It was a little farther than that. Because when she said 2 or 3 stops away by train, she didn't mean like the subway train. She meant the high-speed rail train that, goes completely across China. Hunan was not a city, it was a province, like a state. And I was heading to Guiyang, Hunan, which is not the famous Guiyang. That's a different Guiyang in another province. No, this was a very small city in the Hunan province that was halfway between agricultural and a city. So you could still see the agriculture like on the outskirts of the city, but the city in the center itself was still like a very small city sort of thing. And yeah, that was also another experience unto itself. But I ended up in Hunan when I was supposed to be in Guangzhou. And there could have been a litany of other things that went wrong that didn't go wrong because I was lucky. And I didn't realize how lucky I was until I started to hear a couple of the horror stories a year or two into my travels in China. It can get bad if you are not prepared, which is why I'm doing a lot of these videos, because I want people to be prepared. I want people to go over there and be confident and be able to say, like, no, I really don't want to go to Hunan. I kind of want to stay in the major city or over here, or I want some, make sure that I want someone there to pick me up at that point in time, or to take money ahead of time, or any of the other stuff that could come along with it. Keep in mind that my experiences in China have been mostly positive, but I recognize that other people have not had the same experience that I have with China. At the same time, I recognize that a lot of people had it way worse than I did. So yeah, that's kind of my first day in China, my first meal in China. Sadly. After that, we had more appropriate meals and stuff like that. Oh, by the way, did you know that a lot of people believe that on a boiling hot day, you should be served hot tea? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But the idea behind it is that the hot tea is supposed to cause you to sweat, and then that will start the cooling sort of thing. And no, that doesn't work for me. And the hot tea just makes me extremely hot, and I don't feel cool afterwards. I sweat, but I don't feel cool afterwards at all. Give me ice cold water on a hot day, please. Thank you. But yeah, anyways, I think that's where I'm gonna stop things for now, because I don't want to travel on for too long. Hopefully this is a nice little remembrance of having coffee with me on an evening after work or after school. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I'm hoping that one day, if everybody gets vaccinated, we'll be able to do this in person. That would be really nice. I miss my coffee shop visits. I'll see you next time.